Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my wrap up for the month of July. So this is extremely delayed. It is what it is. It's summertime and things have been busy, but I did want to come back and wrap up the books that I read in July. So I read a total of 11 books in that month, 5 of which were nonfiction, 6 of which were fiction. 3 of those nonfiction books were for the BookTube Prize, and 1 was for the Book Naturalist Book Club. So that's 4 books right off the top. And then I read 1 further nonfiction, and then the rest fiction. So let's just go through them in order of when I completed them. The first thing that I completed in the month was World of Curiosities by Louise Penny. This is number 18 in the Inspector Gamache mystery series, which is set in Quebec. And I just really love this series. I especially like listening to them on audiobook. I think that they're done really well on audio. And World of Curiosities was quite a long mystery, and it was very convoluted. It did take place in Three Pines, which I do prefer the mysteries that take place in Three Pines because I love that very small village setting, and I love all the inhabitants of the small village and like their quirks and foibles and everything. I just find really, really charming. And it also is sort of a very layered story that involves a very old case that was the first case that Inspector Gamache and his colleague Jean-Guy worked on together when Jean-Guy and Gamache first became partners, or Gamache brought Jean-Guy into his homicide department, basically. And then there's a mystery that evolves in the village of a like blocked in room and what's inside that room. And then a third layer of mystery happens. And I don't want to give anything else away about it, but it was well done. I enjoyed the story. I particularly liked the insight that it gave with the characters. And I think what I particularly liked was it showed the gray areas of our favorite main characters. It showed that they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I thought it was well done that way. The second thing I completed was a nonfiction, and it was a literary biography. And I did speak about this book in my July mid-month book bash vlog, but I will just briefly mention it here. If you want a really detailed discussion of it, please go back and check that out. And the book is The Last Englishman by Byron Rogers, and this is a biography of the author J.L. Carr, who wrote one of my favorite novels, A Month in the Country. And this was just an excellent 5-star read for me for a biography. I don't particularly gravitate towards literary biographies as a genre, but this one was so well done. It's really engaging. It's very funny. And the way that Rogers breaks up J.L. Carr's life and basically devotes a chapter to separate sections in the author's life that was really, really well done. And I just would highly encourage, particularly if you also like A Month in the Country or other works by J.L. Carr, definitely pick this up. If you like literary biography, pick it up. If you like humorous writing about quirky Englishmen, pick this up. It's all of those things. And J.L. Carr led such an interesting life. Most of his adult life took place between World War I and then World War II happened, and he fought in World War II, and then he comes back and he doesn't become an author. It doesn't become a published author until his middle age. And so it's such a fascinating look at sort of early to mid 20th century life in England, and this one man's like very kind of strange life throughout that period. Very, very well done. The next book that I finished was a science fiction novel, and it's this one that I have right here, The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. I did also speak briefly about this in that mid-month book bash vlog in July, but I had not done my final check-in with my buddy reader Britta, and so I want to come back to this and say that this book was excellent in theme and topics and then sort of failed in execution, I think. It's a series of 3 novellas that are connected together in that some of the same characters go throughout, but they're not like back to back to back stories. There's like 100 years in between each story, and they all take place on this terraformed world. It's like 50,000 years in the future, and this book explores themes of gender and what makes individuals human, quote unquote, or sentient beings, because in this world, different creatures have been imbued with consciousness and they participate in society as speaking, communicating members of society. So, you know, cats and dogs and moose and, you know, horses and like all different kinds of critters, not just animals, but other things have consciousness. And this book really delightfully explores why humans, you know, that this concept that humans have, that we're the only living beings with consciousness and souls and like these sorts of things. So I liked that part of it. I also like this idea of terraforming and what that would be like if our ancestors in the future were to try to create an Earth-like planet, and then how companies would get involved in that and what capitalism sort of would look like in that kind of a system. And that was really interesting as well. But the story itself sort of didn't hold together throughout. It started off really strong in the first novella, was pretty good in the second novella, and then by the third novella, it's like it just kind of fell apart. Characters that we had met in the first novella were not acting like themselves by the third novella, and like the story just sort of didn't hold together. But high marks for concept here. I just wish that had been executed. I think these would have been better as entirely separate stories, like not tried to link them together, probably. The next book I want to talk about is a romance novel that I read with my romance buddy readers, Doris and Katie, and that is Love Theoretically, the newest release by Allie Hazelwood. We've read all of Hazelwood's previous books and really enjoyed them. We like the juxtaposition of women in science in the STEM fields and romance, and this book was no exception. We're following our 2 love interests who are rival physicists, which physics is not my like favorite field of science, but this was very well done. And our main character, female character Elsie, is at the beginning of the book is an adjunct professor, and she's sort of drowning in financial problems and like not being able to make ends meet, because as an adjunct professor, she's working her tail off, but she's not getting rewarded for that financially in a way that allows her to live realistically in the world. And this is a really excellent takedown of why the problems around adjunct professorship and why it's a problem that universities and colleges in the United States are sort of leaning on this model of how to provide teaching services in their institutions. I thought that part of the book was excellently done. And I also really like the relationship between Elsie and our hero, Jack. Jack is sort of the bigwig physicist at MIT. Elsie has applied for a job in that department, and she thinks Jack hates her and is going to try to block her in getting this job. And this job, which evidently is realistic to life, I don't know, I don't work in academia, but that you have to go through all these various levels of a job, like interview, and then you have to go, I don't even know what you call these things, but basically you have to go to the institution and like give a presentation, and then you get a tour through the department and you get to see how it all interacts, and there's labs involved and what people are doing for research and all this sort of stuff. And it goes on and on and on. Your job interview basically lasts for weeks. And that was just, it was a good sort of event to have this developing romance happening within, and really enjoyed. There's lots of great side characters, and there are evil, awful people that are trying to block Elsie from getting what she wants, and Yeah, really great. Hazelwood does excellent dialogue, which is like my favorite part of romance novels, is if you have good, snappy, witty dialogue, like I am in for that. And I like the way that she's exploring sort of workplace issues and what women in the STEM fields are dealing with in that field. So yeah, very good. And then I finished a book that's been quite talked about quite a lot on BookTube over the past few months, and that's Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I did talk about this a little bit in a previous vlog in July, but I hadn't finished it, and so I want to discuss this in more depth now. Again, this was a buddy read with Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot and a commenter and friend Sonia, and I really enjoyed this book, and I am super glad that I did, because I did not like Kingsolver's book published just before this, Unsheltered, very much. I really had some problems with that one. And some of the problems that I had with that book are in evidence in this book as well, but not to the extent that they bothered me in Unsheltered. So Demon Copperhead, if you have not heard, which I'm sure you have, is a story of young boy Damon, who is born to a drug addict mom, and then proceeds through life just like every bad thing that can happen to him happens to him. And he's growing up in this small rural town, Appalachia, and it's very hard hit by the opioid epidemic, and he is tangled up in the foster care system. And there's so much in here that's so true to my experience of living in a very small rural community in this country, in the United States. And I don't live in Appalachia, but the issues that Kingsolver is exploring in this book are also happening in my community. And so I felt very connected to the issues that Demon was going through. Demon narrates the whole story. The whole story is told from his perspective, and he's a fantastic narrator. I loved his narrative voice. He's snarky, and he's big-hearted, and he is like trying to be brave and strong when like crap keeps getting thrown at him all the time. I thought it was just very well done. Kingsolver does fall into a few moments of like preaching to the choir from this book, but I did not think it was as egregious as it had been in Unsheltered. So I was able to move past it. It was not a perfect novel. I do not think it's perfect, but I think it is a very, very good story, and one that's to be told about a community and a group of people that is not often talked about in this country, I think. And I would say if you liked the nonfiction book Empire of Pain, definitely try this one. I think there's a lot of similar issues being discussed, and based on my enjoyment of this book and Empire of Pain, I have also picked up Dope Sick by Beth Macy, which is also talking from a nonfiction perspective about these topics. So yeah, this one was highly successful for me. It's a chunky monkey, but I really enjoyed my time spent with this novel. And then I have another literary fiction novel, and this one was from the Ancient TBR, another buddy read, this time with Joe Smith and Kim from Middle of the Book March, who did not finish the book. Joe and I did finish the book, and I have to say that this book was not a success for me. This is sort of dual timeline historical fiction that is exploring the Chinese Revolutionary period from sort of mid-20th century to the Tiananmen Square incident through the eyes of two particular families who are intertwined because certain individuals in those families are musicians, and they are studying music in China, and then things happen and these people go different directions. It's very slow. It is very wandering in its storytelling. There's a lot in here about music that went entirely over my head. It's classical music, composition, that sort of thing. Not anything that I'm particularly interested in. I got a lot more out of this book through the buddy read. Joe specifically pointed out some things that Thien was trying to do with this novel that when She explained to me. I went back and reread some sections and then read some Wikipedia about the lead up to the Tiananmen Square incident, and that helped me understand better what Thien was trying to do. But for me, the book just did not hold together in terms of a story that captured my attention and my interest and made me want to pick it up and read on. So I would prefer to read nonfiction about these historical events in China versus a historical fiction novel about that. And you can hear more of my thoughts if you're interested about this book in my last vlog, my weekend reading vlog in July, where I talk about this book quite in depth. And then last but not least, I finished Encore and Death by J.D. Robb, which is the latest book in her Eve Dallas futuristic police procedural series. I think it's book like 53 or 54 in that series, which I love. You've heard me talk about. And I did talk about that as well in the July weekend reading vlog. So if you're interested in that, but I'm not going to go into that one in detail because it is so late in the series. I think really, unless you're a devotee of the series, like you're not going to start at that end of it. And I enjoyed my time spent with that book tremendously. And I continue to really lean on that series when I need some entertainment and a book that I know is going to bring me joy. So those are the books that I read in the month of July. It wasn't a particularly, I didn't read a lot, but I read some really thick books, and I read a lot of books that were very worthwhile in my opinion. So I am pleased with what I did read, and I'm deep into it for the month of August, and hopefully I will be able to come back with you with a wrap up for August reading much quicker than I did with my wrap up for July. I hope you're all doing well and finding some good books to read. I will talk to you later.